Emergency service providers work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Our main purpose is to save lives.
That's what we're trying to do.
Somebody dies or somebody gets saved.
For our first responders, the moment the call for help comes in,
4 people in the water from a sunken vessel.
the race against time to save a life begins.
How sick is this patient?
It is a life and death situation.
Through unprecedented access
His body's starting to shut down.
We need to do something quickly.
It is going to be painful.
and intimate interviews,
It'll certainly stick with me.
in this series, we're telling their stories.
It is a privilege to be able to help people. It's not something I ever take for granted either.
To change a patient's outcome feels amazing.
This week on First Responders, a dangerous rescue in huge seas as 4 people cling on for dear life.
To be in the water in that sea state, he might not even survive.
And Northland medics carry out an extremely difficult night mission.
No lower. The deck on the ship was rolling side to side quite substantially.
The Auckland Rescue Helicopter Trust is one of the busiest rescue agencies in the country. When the call comes in, they can be airborne in under 10 minutes. The dedicated team of medical staff and aircrew always hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. So that when the worst happens, they're ready.
So yeah, Cape Brett, October the 14th.
It's rough. We're talking 10-metre swells. The people in the water were in peril.
Their vessel that they were on was gone, presumably sunk.
Definitely the hardest rescue that I've ever performed. The conditions were the harshest conditions that I've ever been in.
It honestly seemed that the seas were building and you're just hoping to see them come out of the white water.
I remember Carl saying, "This one's alive, she's alive."
I'm really proud to this day of what we achieved as a team. And I think the most important thing is that we did this as a team.
A mayday call from a stricken yacht, Essence, triggered a Category 2 search and rescue operation involving the Air Force and the Auckland Rescue Helicopter Team. 4 people were in the water without a life raft near Cape Brett in the Bay of Islands.
We had a crew of 5, more than normal. There was Tinny, one of the most experienced winch operators in New Zealand. We had 2 pilots who, again, very experienced. And then we had another swimmer, intensive care paramedic. So there was 2 of those, myself and Marcel Dreesen. The weather was a major issue and a major concern for us. So weather was very, very bad. These people were extremely experienced. They found themselves caught out, though, by the weather. Their boat rolled and went upside down, that the boat was sinking. When they got rolled, they lost their life raft. We were very, very lucky that day that they sent a Air Force Orion and they had found them before we got there. So they basically guided us to them. The Air Force were able to drop a life raft as well. As we were heading out there, we were expecting to see 4 people in a life raft, glad to see us. What we actually saw when we got there were 2 in a life raft waving out to us, but 2 in the water. So our instant thought is, why are those 2 in the water? We ran for a risk matrix. Can we do this? Is it safe to do this? And the answer was, we think we could do this safely. And really from there, it kind of all sort of happened quite quickly. And before I knew it, was halfway down the wire, heading towards the water.
The sea, it was just awash with white water, and the swells were just phenomenally big, you know. I think they're up to 10 metres, which is like 2 to 3 stories.
So very dangerous for the ICP on the wire. For him to be in the water in that sea state, if he ended up leaving the wire at any stage, he's put himself into a severe peril situation where he might not even survive.
Once we got down there, I found out that they were horribly tangled.
I could see Carl working flat out, at times underwater. You can see him working clearly with a knife. You know that there's a problem in the water.
What I think had happened is they'd taken their dam buoy and pieces of equipment and line off their boat, and it made complete sense they did that because it provided them with flotation and rescue equipment. They also tied themselves together, which again made complete sense. But the combination of that stuff and also the drogues and the lines off the life raft unfortunately tangled them up to a point they couldn't get themselves into the boat. They were destined to stay in the water, and they became very cold very quickly. They became hypothermic to the point where they really couldn't function. My main focus was A, keeping myself safe and not getting tangled myself, and B, cutting away these lines and working out the puzzle to cut enough away to get these people free so we could take them out of the water.
Suddenly you could see the raft physically separate from the now 3 people in the water and drift off real fast. So that again just further reiterated that everything was moving along at a reasonable clip.
The first man I pulled out of the water, he was completely unresponsive. The lady that was in the water was semi-conscious. You could tell she was moving, and she would very slowly respond, but not to a point you could have a conversation with her. So yeah, he was in the water and he was the closest to me, and he seemed like the sickest, so it just made sense to go with him first.
So ideally, you know, we wouldn't be winching people sort of any more than 30, 40 feet above the water, but the water was moving that in itself. So yeah, we kind of sort of accepted that we were going to have to winch it significantly higher than what would be normally comfortable with.
I thought he was horribly hypothermic. It was my hope that he was alive. The first sign that he clearly was not alive was when I pulled him into the aircraft, and that's when I had a really good opportunity to take a good look at him, and I realised he had passed away.
We pulled him in board, and I remember thinking, oh, sorry. I remember thinking, crikey, this guy's not alive.
I was pretty gutted, to be fair. My sense of urgency was to get down and make sure this didn't happen a second time.
The Auckland Rescue helicopter team are battling 50-knot winds and massive seas off the coast of Cape Brett. Chief Intensive Care Paramedic Carl Taylor has been winched down to rescue 4 sailors whose yacht has sunk in the storm. However, the first man pulled from the water has not survived.
It was clear things were really bad for Stu. The problem we're faced with is we've still got other people in the water. The life raft is now hundreds of metres away from Pamela, so she's in the water by herself, and she had to become the absolute priority.
Oh, look, I was really, really worried I was going to go back down there and realise that she is deceased as well, so I was really worried for her. I got down there and then I started putting the strop over her. I untangled her a little bit more to make sure that she was free as she could be, and she actually started fighting me. She didn't know what she was doing and she didn't know where she was. But the fact that she was trying to fight me was a really good sign for me, so it made me feel like, okay, this patient's going to come up alive.
Once we came to take the weight again, the trick was trying to take the weight off the top of the swell. So as the swell's coming up, you want to bring in the slack of the cable and ideally take them off the top of the swell. So if the swell's dropping away and you're winching in, then you run possibility of snap loading the cable, which could damage it or make it part or damage Carl. I do recall the co-pilot, Norman, saying there's a big set coming.
There's a general rule of thumb of the rule of 7, such that every 7th wave will be the large one. So I was kind of doing that, where I was counting out the waves and going, right, okay, I'm expecting a big wave now. Here it comes from the left at 11 o'clock position.
When the co-pilot from Scotland speaks up and says there's a big set coming in, I guess anyone from Scotland saying there's a big set coming in probably means there's a big set coming in.
Tinny's obviously looking out the door and he's trying to talk to Carl in the water.
And as I came up, I was kind of tapping her just to try and get a response from her.
I remember Carl saying, this one's alive, she's alive. And I was like, yep, she is, fantastic.
I made it very clear that she is alive. She is alive. And which is a really silly thing to say, because the people that I was bringing this lady up to, who are very experienced, they know she's alive. But I was quite emotionally, I want you guys to know she's alive and look after her.
She was hypothermic, not really responsive, but she was awake and I could see she had life. Yeah, sorry.
That's good news. It's very much good news. But let's crack on, because we've got another 2 to get out of the water.
Tinny was talking to him and I could see he was getting pretty tired and whether it was time to tap out and for me to go, but he said, no, I'm good.
I've known Carl for a long time and done a lot of work with him. He's probably one of the fitter members of the team. So I had some inherent sort of, I guess, trust within Carl that he would be able to, if he said he's okay to go, then let's go with that.
It was a really nice feeling knowing that there was someone to sub out with. After the first 2, I felt like we'd broken the back of the hard part of the winching, and I just felt that subbing out at that point was just going to delay things. Just to having the knowledge that someone was there to sub out with me, it actually made all the difference from a psychological point of view.
We had 2 people in a life raft, so they had flotation. They're away from the water, but we didn't actually know what condition they were in. Ideally, I'd want to try and get Carl close as possible to the doorway of the raft so he can pull himself on board. Once the life raft had been cut from the drogue, we knew it was moving, but my initial attempt to put Carl in sort of a beam the raft, that was a cunning plan on my part, which was an absolute fail. Once the wave hit the raft and moved it arm's reach away, it was clear that he was never going to catch that raft at that rate of drift.
I started swimming towards it and I thought to myself, nah, I'm A, not going to catch this, and B, I'm just going to exhaust myself trying to. So I stopped and Tinny worked out pretty quickly what I was doing and he just dragged me across. It looked worse than it was, being dragged around.
Yeah, that was a fail and I felt like I'd let him down a bit. So said a couple of F-bombs and right, let's haul him back in and start again. He's already been in the water for probably an excess of quarter of an hour. It's not overly warm, and it's only sort of October, so I wouldn't say tropical.
It was a bit of a final oomph of energy to pull myself into the life raft. They were okay. They didn't seem injured, but you could tell they wanted to get off. One of the guys, I think it was Bruce, he said, take him first, and I said, nah. I said, you're the closest, you're coming with me.
Carl disappeared into the raft. And literally you're looking at heaving seas, you've got no real idea of what's going on. Not too long after, there was 2 of them out of the raft back into the tide. Sense of relief that number 3 is on the way, and then suddenly we saw the emergency abort the hoist hand signal from Carl, which meant that, yeah, Houston, we've got a problem of some sort. It wasn't clear to me what the problem was, but his hand signal was extremely clear that we needed to abort the hoist and put him back into the water.
At some point, one of the ends of the strop must have come out. There was no way we were going to better to winch him without both ends of the strop connected. So I signalled Tinny to put me back in the water, and then I went through a bit of a process under the water, trying to reconnect the strop.
It honestly seemed to me that the seas were building. It appeared to go from sort of breaking occasionally to almost constant, and the swells at times were coming from different directions. You're flat out trying to control slack cable, because if they get rolled and the cable goes around them, you could really hurt them.
We got hit by a pretty big wave, but we made it happen and we got him out safely.
As they were coming up, he had the ability to maintain arms down positions, which led me to believe that if he was the first one out of the raft, that probably meant that the last one in the raft was going to be in a similar condition. As he came up, I had a wee giggle. I don't know how he managed it, but he still had his Crocs and socks on. Pamela was clearly still very, very sick.
She was quite rigid and stiff because that's what happens when your body core temperature drops. I remember thinking, well, we've got to get her warmed up.
In the perfect sense, it would be you would close the doors, you would start active rewarming. We've got the whole side of the aircraft open. There's not a thing we can do to an attempt to try and start to warm poor Pamela up.
And it seemed a pretty short time later he was back again with the 4th guy. He was in and he was rescued, you know. And then that was it. The door got shut, the heaters were cranked up.
Carl, he was pretty shattered. There might have been a little bit of reserve left in the tank, but yeah, not sure how much he had left. He'd done a superb job that day. Yeah, put someone down in those conditions 4 times. That's a lot of wire time in that kind of water.
I think I'm pretty physically exhausted, but I'm also emotionally exhausted as well. It was a really great thing to have Marcel, very experienced intensive care paramedic, to actually then make some good clinical decisions for the people that were there.
There's a lot to think about, and it's not one of these things where you can celebrate too early.
The two that were on the life raft were in good shape. They were a bit cold, but we weren't super concerned. We were very concerned about the lady. We couldn't get a temperature on her because our thermometers basically don't read that low. We anticipated, worst case scenario, that she may cardiac arrest. So we prepared for that situation so that we could manage that if we needed to.
We'd not got everyone successfully out of the water, but we'd got the majority. And we're then actually thinking about, okay, how far have we got to go to land? Where are we going to take them to? I'm planning to go back to Whangarei. Can we actually get there? If the weather clamps in and gets worse, are we going to be suckered by the fact we don't have enough fuel to go somewhere else? All these little factors.
The decision was made by Marcel, which I think was an excellent decision, was to land at Kensington. It made far more sense to actually land where we could get the ambulance to our patients as quickly as possible.
So we landed at Kensington and quickly triaged and prioritised. Pamela went into an ambulance where she was then looked after when a 5-minute trip up to Whangarei Hospital. The other two guys weren't as critical. They just need a lot of warming up and be checked over, so they went in ambulances also. And then it sort of started to sink in a bit, I guess, about what we had achieved, which was quite something, you know, with the cooperation of everyone together. We had achieved 4 people rescued and brought in. The doors closed in 22 minutes on scene, which in those conditions was phenomenal. It was awesome, you know, so something to be real proud of, and yeah, despite the tragedy of losing a life. But, you know, the fact we could also bring Stuart home to be with Pamela, with his family, with his friends, and, you know, that was awesome. At least we didn't need to leave him, and everyone was together.
Yeah, I am proud of what we did. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it took a while to arrive at that. I think the loss of one, for me, sort of largely eclipsed, yeah, not losing three others. So, yeah, yeah, it's still not ideal.
They were very thankful. I think they felt like it was an honour to meet us, but, you know, to be fair, it was a real honour for us to meet them as well.
I guess the more you get to know the survivors and you feel not only their loss, but their relief as well. So, you know, Bruce, he lives just down the road from Mum. He turned up to Mum to explain what his son had done. Met his grandkids, his children, yeah.
What they did and how they got themselves through that was quite incredible, and you can just imagine the hopelessness of people in the water, in the middle of the ocean. Somehow they managed to get themselves through it, so kudos to them, and yeah, it's bittersweet. We set out there and we did safely what we set out to do, but it was just really sad that we couldn't get there quick enough.
It'll certainly stick with me as one of the biggest rescues that I was able to partake in and be part of, and making a difference in a lot of people's lives, and yeah, for the better of it. So yeah, thanks for allowing me to be able to share and talk about that. It was awesome.
We are here 24/7. We generally do 12-hour shifts. We could be needed at any time of the day or night. We were refurbishing the machines when one of the day pilots received a phone call from the Rescue Coordination Centre about a large vessel, so a bulk carrier. It's about 180 metres long, called the Bulk Tech. It had left Auckland earlier that day. It was actually making a trip to Bluff via the Cape and down the west coast. One of these sailors, male in his 20s, it started with a bit of niggling abdominal pain, and that had developed into quite severe pain.
The doctor who assessed the patient by phone through the Rescue Coordination Centre suspects appendicitis, So the Northland Emergency Services Trust have been tasked with the tricky night mission.
Nighttime might be a time where we might pray for a little bit of downtime, but sometimes that's when our most challenging jobs can occur.
So once we're on site at night, obviously you can't see as much, even with the NVGs or the night vision goggles, which just makes it a little bit more difficult in terms of holding a reference and holding the aircraft steady for, you know, the winch operator and medics to do their job. So that's sort of adding an extra element to it.
Given ongoing risk around COVID, the patient is wearing a full hazmat suit and lying on the deck waiting for the crew. But they're facing more than a few challenges. The massive ship is covered in cranes and gear, the sea swell is huge, and the chopper can only get so close.
I'd quite like, from an entry point of view, to be immediately left of the target, so the target at our 3 o'clock.
Roger. Even though the boat was quite well lit up, once we're in position overhead the vessel,
The exit would be left and up.
I didn't have those peripheral vision cues that you'd normally have during the day, which just made it a little bit more challenging.
And steady there. And we'll track right.
What we were actually presented with was a vessel that had powered off their main engines.
At 1:30.
They thought that powering down would be more beneficial to us, make our job easier.
Stand by.
Unfortunately, what that means is they'd ended up moving with the swell, and it had resulted in a vessel that was rolling quite substantially. We're looking at 3 to 4 metre swells, and the deck on the ship was rolling side to side quite substantially. And when I am picking where I want to put the medic down safely, and I'm seeing the deck rise and fall a good 3, 4, 5 metres either side, I'm instantly thinking, this isn't going to work like this. This is going to result in potentially injuries of my medic, and it's going to be very, very difficult to proceed.
From an emergencies point of view, will we have flyaway?
Okay, yes.
Okay.
The boat was very large, which generally speaking would make it more stable. But then this particular bulk carrier had cranes all over it, which was there was 4 cranes positioned along the centre. And then once we were established there, we could also see there was some steel framing that was set up, or supports around running along the edges as well. So that created a lot of obstacles or hazards for the line to actually snag on, adding a little extra element of challenge to the job.
Stand by. 190 feet.
The chopper crew instruct the skipper to get back up to around 10 knots to stabilise the ship, then ready themselves to send St John Intensive Care paramedic James Price down the line.
Yeah, you cleared the descent. Tail's well clear.
When I'm at the door, ready to go down, I have the ability to say no if I'm not comfortable. But I have faith in our crew, Richard, Shane and Brian. We had a really good plan in place, as we do for every winch. Everything was briefed, and I was confident enough that once the vessel was underway, it was a stable enough platform for me to safely winch on and off.
How do you feel in this position?
I'm good, mate.
Are you happy if I bring James to the door on safety?
Over.
I've worked with Richard on quite a few occasions, both winching and on non-winching jobs. I have a high degree of trust in him and his abilities. We have multiple redundancies when it comes to communication in terms of hand signals and light signals that we give. Effective communication down the wire means that the medic can be kept aware of any operational issues with the helicopter, mechanical issues or fuel issues which may affect my decision-making down the wire, and it allows for smoother and faster communication when it's time to retrieve.
No lower. Dropping. Right, 4, 3, 2, right, 1, and steady. Steady there, clear the winch out. Clear the winch, winching out. James is 5 below. Steady there. Steady. Oh, that's 110. James is halfway. Look right and back 3, you are clear back, and you are clear right. Right and back 2.
Okay.
I've lost reference, mate. Yeah, you lost reference.
When I say lost reference on this particular job, I could still see part of the boat, but it wasn't what I'd established as where I would use to keep myself in position. And so I think that first time it started to disappear underneath. And so once that happens and you do lose reference, you don't have necessarily anything to know whether you're drifting left, right, back and forth. Even the calls from Richard wouldn't be fast enough if he was trying to give those. So you sort of still need to have a hover reference in order to maintain that position. And that's probably was a big cue, and Richard was very calm about that. So if I said, yeah, I've lost my reference, he knows then to bring that hook back up, and we can reset and try again.
So you need to move back 3. James is well above the deck. Okay, coming back. Okay. Fine, work here, heights 1 back to 2.
It was a bit more challenging than I probably thought in my head at first. In my mind, I'm thinking about all those structures that are there, the cranes and the framing around the outside, things that could easily snag the either empty hook or James themselves, and the sort of, I guess, the consequences if that would actually happen.
Heights 140. And steady there. Right, 5.
So whenever we have a medic on the end of the cable, whenever we're live winching, we always go through the process of arming our cable cutter. So we have an explosive charge in the winch that will fire a chisel through the cable and cut it. I have access to this in the back, and both the pilot and the co-pilot can access it from the front.
Heights 110. Right, 2.
So if any point where we feel like the medic is going to be taken into danger and we don't have time to put him down or pull him up, we'll cut the cable. If we've hooked up to a vessel and we don't have the ability to winch out, give some slack and quickly unfoul that hook, we're going to cut the cable. We'd much rather drop a medic than potentially drag them through trees or structures on a ship. They have more chance of survival if we were to do that. It'd be a very, very difficult thing to do, but as a winch operator, you need to be prepared to do that. That hesitation of going, oh, I don't want to do that, could actually mean the death of your colleague. So, yeah, it's a hard thing. I think about it. I think about it a fair bit when we go out. The reality of it, the likelihood is incredibly low, but you need to be able to do it at a second's notice.
James is well above the deck. Coming back.
I was just getting a little bit frustrated that we couldn't get there in the first go, something that probably would normally happen maybe on an overland or a bush winch. So taking a few extra goes to get him down there, which we did obviously in the end.
James is approaching the deck, coming up, and we're clear to move left. Right.
Clear that rigging.
Clear that rigging. James is approaching the deck, good height. James is on the deck, clear the hook.
Once I was on the deck and off the hook, I made my way over to the patient.
James is now able to assess the patient, but the most dangerous part of the operation is yet to come.
We've got a big swing on.
My biggest concern was, are we going to snag on something and then we're going to have to potentially lose the whole line.
Watch out for that, James.
Off the coast of Cape Reinga, the Northland Emergency Services Trust are picking up a sailor from a large container ship at sea.
James is approaching the deck, good height. James is on the deck.
St John Intensive Care paramedic James Price has been winched down to the patient who was waiting on the deck and appears to be in good shape. But the most dangerous part of the mission still needs to be carried out.
Once I was on the deck and off the hook, I made my way over to the patient. I felt his radial pulse, and the way that he was moving, the way that he was talking, and the characteristics of his pulse told me that in that moment I wasn't concerned about an immediate threat to life. He confirmed to me that he was in pain. However, we usually operate on a rescue first, treat later principle, which becomes even more important on this type of job because of the conditions, the night time, the weather, the difficulty that we anticipated in getting him off the vessel. We don't want to waste time unnecessarily on the deck, and he was moving quite well when I asked him to.
With James preparing the patient to be winched up, the helicopter crew readied themselves for the challenge of bringing 2 people back up the line.
What's the wind like at the moment? Just decide whether I stick another weight on the
Yeah, we've got almost 30 knots on the nose.
Sweet.
Looking pretty good. The fuel is at 1,060, 300 above bingo. So basically half an hour fuel.
Thanks, man.
So bingo was, it's really good. It basically means that we know we've got another half hour before we have to leave here and go and get more fuel. And that was an option.
Rescue medic full bed.
Go ahead.
Patient is inside the ARV.
Copy.
Okay, James is not going to be able to move towards us. So he's quite central on the deck, so we're not going to necessarily be able to be as far forward as we went.
Okay, that's cool.
Okay, so he's ready for retrieval.
That was probably the more stressful part of the winch, and I think you get that feeling where you've put a winch medic onto a vessel, your crewmate, your friend, someone you spend a lot of time working with. Not only are they down on this vessel now with no way back, they've also got a patient that they need to care for. So you feel an element of pressure to retrieve them.
All right. Happy clear to winch out?
Clear to winch out.
Height's 110.
Okay. 110 for the height.
Winching out.
Come up with just a wee bit.
Yeah, that's good height there. If we can move right 5.
Right 5.
The hook's halfway. Right 3. Right 2. Yeah.
Coming.
Because we're moving into wind, and I think that night it's 20 to 30 knot wind, so it wasn't hurricane force, but it was a good brisk wind. What can happen is the hook, we can get what's called cable sailing, and the hook can actually end up sitting quite back of the aircraft.
Okay. Just back and left for your target.
Back and left.
Yeah, I'm getting the. Sorry, we've got a big swing on, so.
The main concern I have is it going to catch on something? Between the cranes and the framing that was around the edge, so my biggest concern that was going through my mind was, are we going to snag on something and then we're going to have to potentially lose the whole line?
Left 1, and steady. Watch out for that, James.
Imagine if a hook on a wire was to hit a bar, wrap itself around a bar, get what we call a foul. Instantly, the aircraft is attached to that ship, and it would take very, very little to pull the aircraft out of the sky. So there would be a point where we very quickly cut the cable.
No, too much movement.
The change in speed, let's get me this time. I've got good position left and right now.
Forward 2. Okay, retrieving hook. We're just coming back. Okay.
Yeah, Richard, if anything, probably has a more complicated job than I do.
Left 1.
Losing reference, mate.
Okay, back and left.
He needs to be able to communicate to me where he needs me, to move me left, right, forward and back, to con me into position. He also needs to be watching where the wire's going, and in this case, trying to help stop the swing, which he has limited ability to do.
We can go higher if you think that'll be better for you. It gives us better clearance over the cranes. Will it give you reference?
Hopefully.
And on top of that, also look for any obstacle that the aircraft might be coming in contact, protecting the aircraft.
Okay, so hook is clear of the structures. Big swing.
You've got so many moving components, you've got hazards to look out for, you've got clearances, and in amongst that, you've got to make sure you keep up that patter, you keep up that communication with the pilot, and that I'm not just talking to the pilot, I'm hearing what the pilot's saying. So I'm hearing if he's having a problem, I'm hearing if he needs some specific information from me. You can easily get to a point where you are overloaded cognitively in a situation like that.
Back and left, clearly.
And sometimes all it takes is we'll give a command, just clear back and left, and we'll move away, we'll come back. Everyone can just take a breath, we're in a safe position, we look at what's going on.
And higher and nose cocked off more, would that be just too uncomfortable?
We can analyse what might be a better option if we're struggling with an approach.
If we could move back 1.
And then we can tackle it again, but definitely mentally challenging at times.
James and the patient are hooked up together, with the added weight making it almost impossible for him to move quickly enough to catch the line. But he has a solution.
How do you feel about using crew members to arrest the pendulum and bring the hook to me. Use the crew to get the hook. Yeah, that's a great idea. Steady there.
120.
Steady there. Good clearances. Good position. Forward one. Hook is approaching the deck. Forward one. Hook is approaching the deck. Steady there. Hook is in hand. We've got a lot of cable out, but steady there. Good position.
At last, James and his patient are hooked up to the chopper above.
And once Richard has someone on the line or the hook, so retrieving James, he then needs to focus on the patient and retrieving the rescue medic.
Winching in. Waiter 2 coming on now.
So he has lots of things to share his focus around. I said, so if anything, he's got a more difficult job than I do up in front.
Okay, we've cleared the deck. Holding position. Forward one. Second thumb. Taking your winch in. Okay, we've cleared the deck if you want to move left.
It's the pitch of the ship combined with the upwards movement of the cable means that all of a sudden you're 5, 6, 7, 8 metres above the deck.
We're well clear of the deck.
And the position of the cranes on the deck as well made it preferable for the helicopter to move back and left as soon as I was clear of the deck. So within a blink of an eye, I was out over the ocean.
The winch up.
Copy. That's good.
Okay. Medic and patient are at the door. Winching, bringing them inside.
That was a sigh of relief at that point. That was good. We had the patient, we had James, and we had plenty of fuel to carry on back to the mainland and to hospital. It did turn out that he had kidney stones, and I think anyone who's had kidney stones before will tell you that it's incredibly painful. And the joy of that was that he was actually able to be treated, and I believe even by late the next day, he was in a state where the shipping agent was able to arrange for him to fly to Bluff and meet up with the vessel again.
I think we did really, really well as a crew, as a team, working together to get that patient where they needed to be. So there's no one person on that job that can do it on their own. It really does take everybody in to successfully retrieve someone, especially in these conditions.
Yeah, it was a big day at the office. It was a long day.
Today's job is only a short flight for the GCH aviation crew, but every second could be the difference between life or death.
Comms Z1 Christchurch.
Z1 Christchurch, go ahead.
Good morning, we've lifted 3 POB for Akara domain. Rough ETA is 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 2 hours 20 fuel.
Copy, thank you.
What do we got over there, Brent?
50-year-old male with a cardiac history and a history of PE.
We've been dispatched to Akara for a gentleman in his 50s who's experiencing central chest pain. The clinic has taken a 12-lead ECG and he has some alterations in the ECG which suggest he's got myocardial ischemia, which is causing the chest discomfort for him.
Our biggest concern is whether it's cardiac in nature and the time-sensitive issues that come with that. So if this person was having a cardiac chest pain, it's time-sensitive because time is muscle, heart muscle. Akara is one of those unique places where geographically it's isolated. Using the helicopter was quite good in this instance because drive time for a road resource is about 1 hour 20, and for us it takes us 15 minutes.
We're 1 minute out, confirm no obstructions and ready for us to land.
Confirm, ready for landing, no obstructions.
Roger, see you shortly. You're secure in the back, Brent?
All secure.
Roger. Just got that one light post and you've got fireys on the ground.
100 feet.
Okay, head on. I'm Brent.
How's things?
It's about how you doing?
Better starts of the day, to be fair, but
okay.
Not too bad.
So you've got any chest pain, discomfort or sensation?
A bit of discomfort here, and that's been sort of constant since I was up this morning.
Okay.
That's not a pain thing. It's like it almost feels like a block, if you know what I mean.
He was quite chatty. He seemed quite relaxed, and on the outset, he didn't appear to be in any discomfort or any significant discomfort. He had a dull ache in the centre of his chest, which he had had for quite a while that day, and he admitted that he'd had it quite frequently on a daily basis for the last couple of weeks.
This morning, it was a little bit more pronounced, and I was sweating quite profusely. My wife is an ED nurse, so she wasn't happy.
So I see you got a bit of a history. You've had an ablation for
I had an ablation for
yes,
yeah.
Was that successful?
Yeah. I have a history of PEs, so that was probably about 4 years ago since the last PE.
Yeah. Other than that, have you done anything, been anywhere, or done anything exertion-wise that could have caused any of this?
No. I run the motel business and ice cream shop down there by the wharf. Season's been busy, so I haven't been anywhere.
Yeah. Exertion-wise, if you go for a walk, or do you get any symptoms? Do you become
no symptoms. I must be honest. I don't actually do it very often.
That's right. I am going to remove a bit of hair.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I am from an ex-serviceman and that like I'm woefully unfit.
Yeah.
He's forthcoming with information. He had a couple of abnormalities with his ECG. They sort of point you in the direction of what could be happening, but also to rule out anything else.
And you understand why we're taking you to Christchurch Hospital?
Yep.
All right, that's good.
Just confirm you're happy in the deck by yourself, Brent?
Yep, all good, and I'm pretty sure we got everything. Got life pack and monitoring box.
Accurate Fire, thanks for your help. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Anytime. Have a smooth flight home.
Thanks, mate. See you on the next one. Comms Air 1 Christchurch. We've lifted 4 POB 15 minutes for hospital roof. 2 hours fuel.
Copy, ETA 15 minutes, thank you.
Beautiful day.
During the flight, he's fairly relaxed, he's conversive, he's having a good chat. He does deny any ongoing chest pain, and he feels, pretty relaxed about what's happening.
Darren?
Yeah, fine, yeah. Yeah, so I just updated the emergency department, gave them a heads up, so they know you're coming, and hopefully cardiology will be there when we get there. Okay, cool.
2 minutes out, all secure?
All secure, yeah.
Roger.
Helicopter service, if the time saved is not life-saving, it definitely will be life-changing in some circumstances. If that patient was having damage done to his heart, the time saved, 15-minute transport time versus an hour 20 on road, definitely makes a difference.
Once at hospital, Darren had a stent fitted and he remains on medication to manage his ongoing health. Next time on First Responders, some jobs are more urgent than others.
So we're going to a 5-year-old severe anaphylaxis.
And when time is critical,
Child had previous anaphylactic reactions before, one where he needed CPR, which is, the worst case scenario.
The GCH aviation team aren't going to take any chances.
The first time that he got stung, they basically said that he had died